Hello, everybody. Ricky Widmer here from MVP Sports and the Onside Kick, here bringing you another NFL preview for the 2014 season. This time we got the New Orleans Saints on the dish, and I'm joined with John Hendrix from whodatdish.com, a part of the Fanside Network. John, how you doing?
Good, and how are you? Thanks for having me.
Oh, I'm doing great. Can't wait to talk some football. I can't wait to get to the football season, honestly.
Seems like you anticipate it more and more every season, I'm telling you.
Well, I'm going to start off the way I've started every one of my kind of preview interviews, and that is with the draft. And New Orleans got a player. I want to start off with Brandon Cooks because coming out of Oregon State, I was high on him. I thought the Jets were actually going to draft him. What were your first reactions day one of the draft when the Saints picked Cooks?
Well, first of all, I did a couple of mock drafts, and I saw the only scenario to pan out was to be trading up to get somebody like Odell Beckham Jr. first. But for them still trading up and then getting Cooks with a pick, I mean, I'm telling you, it made sense. The fact that, there was all this speculation in offseason that the Saints might go to more of a run-first attack and get a little beefier up on offense. But with them taking Cooks, it just kind of threw everything out the window and said, okay, hey, we got our playmaker now, and I'm telling you, it's a good feeling, really exciting. Brings a different element to the Saints that haven't been there for a while, and it definitely was missing last year.
And one of the things just otherwise with the draft picks, two guys that I've heard a lot about from Saint fans, nothing before the draft, is your fifth rounder, Powell out of Florida, outside linebacker, and then Rooks, an offensive tackle that you guys picked up in the sixth round out of Kansas State.
Yeah, so Ronald Powell is a little bit interesting because he was a real top prospect coming out of high school, and then in Florida, he played pretty well, but injuries have kind of bothered him a little bit. But he is put together really well, and he's a really good physical presence, good tackler. So he's more of a project at this point, in my opinion, just like Tavon Rooks. Rooks could be eventually that right tackle replacement to Zach Strief. But he's got some room to work. So he's kind of a bit undersized for the tackle position at the moment. But, they've been working through that and putting him in the workout room and try to get him bulked up. But both of those guys have a lot of potential. And if you look at the defensive side of the ball and that side of the ball, those two positions, Saints have a good bit of depth on those.
Were you happy with the Saints draft overall, being a Saints fan yourself?
Absolutely. I don't think it went any better than I could imagine, especially taking Stanley Jean-Baptiste with all the potential that he has. And even in the undrafted people that they brought in, too, like Tim Flanders from Sam Houston State. I mean, there's a lot of really good people. And, if you know the thing about the Saints, obviously they have some really good gems that they'll find through the undrafted process. But I think, honestly, it was a solid draft. I gave it a B rating. I couldn't give it a solid A. I was kind of a little bit puzzled on the pick of Vinny Sunseri, but I get it in a way. He's more of a role player on special teams, but he brings a different fire element to the team. But that was the only big question mark I had from the draft.
You bring up the undrafted free agents, and I'm going to throw in my Illinois kind of fan base out there. One of the undrafted free agents that you guys signed, Steve Hall, wide receiver. For any, let's say, Fighting Illini fan that might be listening, I'm curious to hear the question or the answer. What do you think Steve Hall can add to the Saints if he really even make the roster?
Well, let me tell you this. We love Fighting Illini, and if you think about that, think about Glenn Foster. Glenn Foster was an excellent ad last year. Now, as far as Hall goes, because he's one of those kind of later ads, he reminds me of a guy like Andy Tanner. And Tanner is kind of on the roster bubble this year. I would definitely say he's a great practice squad candidate at this point. And of course it all depends on how his work ethic is out on the field. But the reports have been pretty solid on him. I know a lot of people have the hype is on Brandon Coleman out of Rutgers, and he's kind of struggled. So if Hall can put together some decent looks, I mean, he's somebody who could stay around for sure.
And now to get to the actual players on the roster that have been on the team for a while. On our podcast, The Onside Kick, we actually talked last week about Vernon Davis making comments that Jimmy Graham should get paid like a wide receiver. As a Saints fan, do you want to see Jimmy Graham paid like a tight end, or do you think, you know what, we should pay him like a wide receiver?
And I'm telling you, this is the hottest debate right now. And I'm telling you, if you see anything, if you look at Larry Holder, he's a writer for the Times-Picayune. He put out an article about Graham being paid like a tight end. He is a tight end. I mean, that's the way he should be. But him and Pro Football Talk got into it a little bit because, the whole side of the argument is collective bargaining agreement and stuff. And the bottom line, and this is the point that Holder made, and this is just the truth of it. If you're going to be paid like a wide receiver, then you need to beat the cornerbacks. You can't get shut down by Aqib Talib. You can't get shut down by Richard Sherman's, all those guys. You have to bring the game to it. And ultimately, I'm not saying that Graham shouldn't be paid like a wide receiver. He doesn't get Calvin Johnson money. There's no way.
Mm-hmm.
Some people suggested he should be paid in the range of like Dwayne Bowe or a Miles Austin contract. I mean, there's no question about it. He should be the highest paid tight end in the game. I mean, he's easily going to make more than Rob Gronkowski. That's a given. That should be easy. That's $10 million a year. I don't know how you can't be happy with that, but I think it all stems from the collective bargaining agreement. They're trying to exploit a little bit of a loophole in there, and it gets people thinking. But ultimately, Graham will be back with the Saints. He is a tight end. He's going to get paid like a tight end, but he can get paid upwards up to like a pretty good wide receiver. But I don't think they're going to overpay much for him.
Well, and I'm going to move over from tight end over to the wide receiver, and the Saints' top wide receiver, Marquise Colston. I believe it was on Who Dat Dish. You wrote an article that Colson said he's going to be 100% this year. No foot issues for Marquise?
Yeah, it's amazing to figure out Marcus Colston because you can see with those foot injuries, it's just like Graham last year with that plantar fasciitis that they run a little bit different. It's just a ailing element, and Colston's real tight-lipped, and for him to come out and say that he's really feeling 100%, it's kind of scary. And if he says he's 100%, then you got to take him for his word. Now, I do know that the Saints are going to do everything they can just to make sure that he stays healthy and nothing, like he doesn't re-aggravate that injury. So you should probably see a lot more of the guys like Nick Toon, and some of the other guys like Tanner and Joe Morgan probably get a lot of the work in preseason because those are some of the guys, in my opinion, that are on the roster bubble.
Mm-hmm.
But, Colston is rumored to be 100%. He's looking good. He looks great. I mean, and this is a guy who, doesn't make a lot of noise off the field, like a Steve Johnson or any of those guys, but he's rumored to be 100%. And, you got to realize about Colston, this last year was only the second year he's ever not got 1,000 yards receiving. So, and he still caught it, 75 plus balls last year. So I think with him being 100% and teams having to account for Brandon Cooks and Jimmy Graham and Kenny Stills and then, whoever else, it's just a tough time to figure out who you're going to have to defend on the Saints. And, down here in New Orleans, we call him Mr. Reliable, and that's what we're looking at for Mr. Colston, nothing but good things.
Well, and really, when you have a quarterback like Drew Brees, he can make any receiver look amazing. For fantasy players, wide receivers on the Saints are nightmares. But I'm going to move to the running back position. I'm asking this question because I saw NFL Live talk a little bit about it with Mark Ingram. Do you believe that he could be a solid number 2 coming into this season for the Saints, or is it going to be time for the Saints to say, hey, you know what, Ingram's not going to fit with our system?
Well, you got to understand about Ingram, it's a contract year. So if he's not playing for anything this year, he's got to be playing for the next team, hopefully for next year. So I think Ingram's going to come out, and we saw a lot of flash of, the running with emotion that he had. That game in Dallas, it was like a different player that we're seeing. And he struggled early, but, I think personally the best thing for the Saints right now is that they brought back Jonathan Goodwin. I know he's a veteran. I know he's got a little bit of tread on him, but the Saints running game, if you look at old film from 2009, even when he was with the Saints in 10 and up until he left, that whole tenure, that their run game was pushing people off the ball. And I think with this year, with having him, he's going to make some noise. Now, that's not to say that, if he's going to split time with Kyrie Robinson. So I think those two are easily going to rotate out, and Pierre Thomas will probably be the third down back, no problem. He's going to fill that role like Sproles. But to answer your question, Ingram, I think he's due for a strong season. Now, I don't see a 1,000-yard season out of him for sure, but if he can get anything going like he did towards the late end of the season and running like he did against Philadelphia, then it's going to be kind of scary, and the Saints are going to have a hell of a decision to make on, whether they're going to keep him next year or not.
Well, and now I'm looking defense, and one of the things that I know I asked you before we started recording was the health of the Saints defense, and I'm looking Jarius Byrd for sure because you guys signed him as a free agent, and I'm looking at him because of the passing offenses that the Saints are going to have to play. You got Atlanta twice, Carolina twice, of course, Dallas, Green Bay, Detroit, Chicago, San Francisco. What do you think of the defense health-wise, and are they going to be able to hold up against these high-powered offenses in 2014?
Well, let me tell you, with the defense, there's two injuries that are kind of a little bit uneasy. And the Bird, it was for his discs, and it's elective surgery is what we're told. And anytime you have to deal with a back, obviously it's never, if you've ever had any back issues or pulled your back or anything, you know that the back is a pretty vital organ or vital part of your body. So for Bird, I'm taking it as word that he's going to be, he's going to come in and make some noise. He is a ball hawk. He's been talking a lot with Keenan Lewis, and that secondary, with Lewis and Champ Bailey should be the number 2 corner. And Vaccaro, I mean, that's a hungry secondary. And, I mean, even the reports lately says they're trying to copy Seattle exactly. They're going to be a physical presence. Their focus is all about turnovers. I mean, it's going to be scary to think that, even with those passing teams, they still have to worry about that front 7 pass rush of, Cam Jordan, who's coming off of 12.5 sacks. Junior Gillett's coming off a 12-sack season. You got Akeem Hicks, who is probably one of the best breakout candidates of the year, potential candidates of the year. And then you have, John Jenkins at nose tackle that's coming up. I mean, it's a lot of those pieces of the puzzle that just make it scary. And to think that this defense went from number 32 worst in the league in 2012 to number 4 in just a year, and then you add a couple pieces of that puzzle like Champ Bailey, Jarius Byrd, and then you get a Victor Butler back that's healthy this year. I mean, it's on paper. I mean, it could be easily the most talented defense the Saints have ever had.
Well, and on whodatdish.com, I was checking out the site. You guys had an article where you guys ranked the kind of toughness of games this year for the Saints. Tell us a little bit. What games are you more worried about with the Saints this year, especially like I'm seeing post-bye week?
Well, and the crazy part is the Saints have an interesting schedule because they're going to open up for the first 6 on the road, and then after that bye week they have to go to Detroit. So you get all those claims of the Saints can't win on the road, and I think the Philadelphia game squelched that a lot last year, and I just think it's a big myth. It just happened to be the way it ran, and I think part of the problems on the road last year was just them not getting off to good starts. It was just kind of ugly. In every game they trailed, and they trailed often. So for that, if I had to rank my top game, and which I did, it was San Francisco, because this would be the 3rd straight year we host them at home. And the first year, in 2012, that kind of upended the Saints season. When Ahmad Brooks picked off Drew Brees near the end of halftime, that's when the Saints took a dive. After starting 0-4, they got back up to 5-5, and this was a game that could have just propelled them, and instead it just sank them. And then last year, you got same type of controversy over that personal foul, and that allowed the Saints to go up for the game winner. And this year, it's kind of at ease, and everything else is going to be just wiped his table clean, and it's time to kick some butt. So I think that's the easily the top-ranked game. But I look at other games like Green Bay coming to town. That's always going to be entertaining to see Aaron Rodgers and Drew Brees duel at each other. And then Baltimore. Baltimore's one of my top-rated games because Drew Brees has never beat the Ravens. And so for that to be a Monday night clash, I think that's going to be outstanding. And then them playing Dallas is just kind of early in the season. Typically, they're playing them later in the year, past several times that they've met, especially on prime time. But this is a prime time meeting at the beginning of the year, and we're going to find out quickly how good Dallas is or how bad Dallas is, in my opinion.
Well, now let's jump to the NFC South. And like I said, I was watching NFL Live. It was either this week or last week, and they mentioned that in the last 10 or 12 years, they said, there have been no repeat division champions in the NFC West. Because of that, Saints didn't win it last year. What are the chances Saints are NFC South champs?
Well, yeah, NFC South, since they've started in 2002, there has never been a repeat champion. It's ridiculous. It just is one of those divisions you can't figure out. But I can tell you right now, Carolina's not going to repeat. Their defense can only carry them so far, and they have so many question marks at the wide receiver position. They have some veterans, but they can't rely on just Kelvin Benjamin. They lost out losing Steve Smith. They lost out, and Brandon LaFell going to the Patriots. So I honestly don't look for them to repeat it all. I'll tell you, the one team that you have to look for is the Buccaneers. And
really?
If that's my kind of surprise pick, if you will. And it's not Atlanta, but the thing is, if I look at the Buccaneers, Lovie Smith is a great coach. I love Lovie Smith to death. If he couldn't have went to a better team, and he couldn't have went to a worse team, because as a Saints fan, I'm like, ugh, no, I don't want Lovie Smith going. So I really respect him. He's really a good coach. He does really good things, makes that defense better. The Bucs have a tall trio of wide receivers now that they have to, defenses are going to have to account for. If Mike Glennon is the real deal and can put together, I honestly pick the Bucs to be contenders. The Falcons are, I can't understand these power ranks that, you take a team that went 4-12 last year, you get Julio Jones back, and you don't make too much noise in terms of fixing the big glaring issues. Yeah, sure, you got Jake Matthews, but there's still more issues. And then they lost Weatherspoon for the season, so I can't see Atlanta, being somebody that can really challenge for the division. So I think it honestly is going to boil down to Saints and the Buccaneers, but I still think the Saints have every focus. They have all of the tools and the personnel to take the division this year.
Last but not least, overall prediction. Tell me how many wins, how many losses Saints are going to have, how far do they go? Do they make the playoffs, and how far do they go?
Definitely make the playoffs this year. When I did my rankings, it wasn't a fact that I thought the Saints would just bowl over the competition. I mean, you saw last year, like the St. Louis game, games like that, the classic trap games that happen. I think, honestly, a 12-win season is very respectable. It's very attainable. 13 would be very good. I think there's going to be some bumps along the way and some teams that you might have to look out for, like a Cincinnati. But, I mean, the Saints do have the fact that they went 8-0 at home last year, the road struggles that they really had to overcome. That being said, if they can, they can look at challenging and stay atop the NFC and the NFC South, they can get that first round bye, because I don't see the NFC East doing it. The West is the other division that's going to probably have a first round bye. And then Central, look at me. The North is going to be the division that's going to get that other wild card spot. So I think it's honestly going to come down to New Orleans and then either San Francisco and Seattle in the championship game. I don't see Seattle hadn't lost much. San Francisco didn't lose much of anything either. So depending on who you talk to, the Saints are the third best team in the NFC, and I think it's going to come down to all three of those teams. But I like the Saints to potentially get in the championship, and we'll take it from there. I can't say they're going to be in the Super Bowl, but realistically, I say NFC championship.
So you're saying NFC championship appearance?
Appearance, but I won't tell you that they're going to get in the Super Bowl for sure. I'm not going to spoil it or anything because it's way too early. Yep. But I like their chances. I love this team is just primed for such good things, but it's all about execution. You can have the best team in the world, and if you remember football, and the Bills in the '90s, they had 4 straight Super Bowls and they couldn't punch it in. So it's just you just never know.
Well, and I always do this. I always say that's my last question. But as you were talking, I was thinking, obviously you said NFC Central because you wish the Buccaneers were not in the same division, right?
Right, of course, yeah.
and that got me thinking, just give me a percentage, a chance that the Week 17 game at Tampa, Saints, Buccaneers, for the division.
Honestly, I think the division is going to be wrapped up before that. But I think it's for the last 6 games are against NFC South opponents. I don't think it's for the division. I think the Bucs are going to be playing for probably a wild card at that point. But I wouldn't mind seeing the division come down to that. It would be a dome game, but I would hope that we'd have the division wrapped up way before then.
Well, John, I'd like to thank you for joining us, giving us your insight on the New Orleans Saints. You guys can check John out at whodatdish.com for all the best New Orleans Saints news. And tell us what you guys think down below. Do you agree with what John's saying? Do you agree with the questions that I asked? What questions would you want me to ask Josh in maybe a future video? But that's going to do it for us. As always, have a good day, everybody.
Thanks.